Three, two, one.
Hey everybody, it's Tara Thomas, the Director of School and Community Relations for Waterloo Schools. Happy 2014 as we head into the second half of the new year. A lot has been going on in Waterloo Schools, as those of you who follow local media would be aware. As of right before Christmas, the Waterloo Board of Education voted on, approved, totally gave their rousing support behind our up-and-coming new school superintendent. She is already well known within the district. It's Dr. Jane Lindeman, and she will be taking over the reins as of July 1st when Dr. Norris retires. So welcome, Jane.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So let's talk about who you are, how you came to be in this role. Tell us where you grew up. You're an Iowan by birth.
Sure, yeah. I grew up in Ackley, Iowa. It's a small town 40 miles west of Waterloo, and born and raised in Iowa. Excuse me. I graduated from UNI, so I'm really a local person.
And then you started doing classroom teaching before you got into administration, right?
Yeah, I've been in 5 different districts in my career in the 25 years I've been in education. Started as a teacher for 6 years, and I taught middle school math in Wichita, Kansas. Was young and just thought I wanted to try something a little bit different, and so moved out of state for a few years and then came back to Iowa. Went to Colonesco and taught middle school math for another 3 years, and during that time I worked on my master's degree in administration, and then I've had 3 administrative positions, one in Esterville, that's where I started. I was at the middle school as a middle school principal, assistant principal, and then I came to Dysart, LaPorte City Dysart, which is the Union School District, and I was the middle school principal there for 8 years. And then I came to Waterloo in 2005.
And tell us, in Waterloo, you've definitely moved around, so to speak, but always been committed long term. It's been how many years? Yeah,
I've been here 9 years. You know, when I first came to Waterloo in 2005, I really didn't know that much about Waterloo community, and I thought, you know, it's a great opportunity. I'll come here as a middle school principal, try something a little bit different, and then really just fell in love with the community, fell in love with the school system. The people are wonderful, the community's wonderful, the students are fantastic, and so during that time I've had several different positions. Started as a middle school principal at Bunger, and was there just 1 year, and then in the district office they needed a new director of assessment and learning and results. And they asked me if I would be willing to serve in that capacity, and I'd only been in the middle school for 1 year, so I thought, well, you know, but it seemed like it was the right thing, and so I moved to the central office and did that position for 4 years, and then at that point in time, the associate superintendent at that point in time took a superintendency elsewhere, and so then I moved into the associate superintendent role for Ed Services, and now, in July, I'll move into the superintendency, so 4 different positions.
And it is a history-making appointment in that Dr. Lindeman will be the first female, the first woman superintendent in the history of Waterloo Schools. So how does it feel to be how does it feel to be groundbreaking in your new assignment?
Well, you know, to be honest, I didn't really even think about that. It wasn't until about, you know, just a day or 2 before that I happened to ask the question. I said, by the way, am I the first woman superintendent of Waterloo? And I just didn't even know that. So since that time, I think it's been kind of fun because I've gotten so many notes from, you know, even students, a lot of women who work in Waterloo saying that it's just kind of fun to have, you know, a great role model, a woman as a role model and as a superintendent. So yeah, it's been really really interesting.
And talk about your experience in the district. How things obviously over the last decade have changed, and sometimes the changes come with not always initially open arms embraced by community faculty, but what we know now is that a lot of the initiatives that are in place have improved the performance of our students and the learning, which is all of our goals.
Yeah, I think education as a whole has really changed across the nation, and certainly in Iowa. I'm just really proud to be part of Waterloo Schools. I think that we have gotten out in front of the change. Some of the things that we're working on now and maybe working on in the last few years, other districts around the state are just kind of starting to think about them, and you know, we're thrilled that we're going to have some other districts that are going to be trying to model some of the things that we're doing right now. So yeah, the change has been really tricky. It's been challenging, frustrating, but also really exciting. And we've just done so many things that it's exciting to be part of that groundbreaking reform.
If you're just joining us, this is Tara Thomas with Waterloo Schools, and you are hearing the voice of Dr. Jane Lindeman. As of July 1st, she will be the new Waterloo Schools superintendent, and she's just wanting to get to know the community, to really reach out and remind everybody that the administration in the Waterloo Schools is always accessible, and her being a part of this program today is one example of how she will continue to engage with the constituents in the community as she takes over the reins from Dr. Gary Norris, who is retiring the end of June. So what about where we go from here? Obviously, people coming into a new role, the first thing people will ask you is, okay, what's she going to change? What are your ideas that you're going to carry out in your administration, quote unquote? So talk about what your vision might be that you could share.
Yeah, the vision that I have is really just to take what we're doing currently and the reform efforts that we're doing and make them better. So I've used the words continue and improve quite often. We started some really groundbreaking initiatives in the last 5 years, and that's the right work. I'm convinced of it. We're hearing from staff members and community members that we really do have the right initiatives. We haven't arrived yet. Not all of them are working to capacity. Not all of them are working exactly how we intended, and so we've got a few kinks to work out on certain things. And some places, we have pockets of excellence, but we really want patterns of excellence across Waterloo. And so we're looking at the places where initiatives have really paid off and are working the way that they're intended. And so now we're really going to try to replicate that across the district. We'll be looking a lot at consistency, looking where things are working and just trying to replicate that.
When you look at our district being considered urban, and some of the challenges that it faces as a result of that label, so to speak, how do you approach the administration of an urban district contrasted with, Iowa's more rural schools? They're different animals.
Right. I think it's really about supporting and communicating. Interestingly enough, even though Waterloo has its own, community, it's really, there are some things that are consistent no matter where you are. And so it's about keeping the students first, communicating and having conversations about what's best for kids, trying to work out any issues that aren't working well and trying to improve that. So it really, even though it has its own setting, there are some commonalities that really persist across any setting.
And why administration? You said you started in the classroom. What was it about being a leader within the school on that level that piqued your interest and led you to pursue it educationally and career-wise?
Yeah, that's a really great question. If you spoke to my father, he would say that he is responsible for me going into administration. He just reminded me of that the other day. He said, now remember, who was really the first person that told you that you should become a principal? And he's right, he really was the first person. I taught for 6 years and I really loved the classroom, but I really liked being a part of efforts from the very beginning. I liked being part of the leadership team, and so even as a teacher I tried to engage whenever possible in decision-making groups, and so just kind of found that I had a knack for that, a skill for that, a God-given talent, I think, and so I really went that route. And when I left the classroom, to be honest, I cried for quite a while when I took my first principalship, because I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be happy again, because I really enjoyed being in the classroom. And then I took my first administrative position, and I've never looked back, because I just really, really loved it. I really feel like this is really what I was intended to do.
And you were young. You were only in your 20s when you got into administration.
Yeah, 27 years old. I think I was probably one of the younger people to go into administration, and certainly one of the younger women.
Absolutely. Well, it's exciting, and I know just in talking to women in the community, as you mentioned, there is that extra element of support that you'll get for not just that groundbreaking assignment, but also because years ago, when you look at the way historically it went in administration, and a lot of women didn't get those opportunities to rise up in the ranks. Right. So it's neat to see that today it's much different, the opportunities for women. We have about 5 minutes left here to speak with Dr. Lindeman before we are going to be joined by a legal expert who can give you some free legal advice where it pertains to educational issues. So stick around for that. But before we let our future superintendent go, we want to ask some more questions in terms of, from the parent perspective, what advice would you give to grandparents and parents who are listening? How do they need to be on top of their child's education and engaged in the process?
Right. I think the biggest thing is communication and establishing a communication right off the bat. I'm a parent myself, and I think that when you know your teachers, when you ask questions, when you ask how you can support, when you give advice and make suggestions to the teachers, this is what I know about my child, here's something that I think would help my child, that information is invaluable. It's really about a partnership, because sometimes I think that parents might step back and be a little bit leery and saying, well, I'm not sure that the school really wants to know my opinion, and that's absolutely wrong. And I would just urge parents to know that we want them to be involved, we want to hear from them, we want them not only coming to the school but also just communicating with the school about how they can help and making suggestions. So I would really encourage that.
That's awesome, and we encourage anybody that wants to visit the schools.
Absolutely.
It's an open door policy, so don't ever feel that you're not welcome in the Waterloo schools. And obviously, as Dr. Lindemann is referring to, that dialogue with the administration and the teachers is so important, and one that we embrace as a district, and hence these opportunities like this radio program to share some thoughts with you. What do you think people, I guess in the coming months and years, what's going to be on our radar where education is concerned? You talk about just some of the issues that come to mind, I guess, in the national media. People talk about everything from Common Core to the way that we structure our schedules from days versus hours. Is there anything that comes to mind that you think people might want to know more about, just to kind of explain the logic behind some of these issues that come out in the media?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, if you look at any reform efforts across the nation, they all have one pattern of one commonality, I would say, and it really is the commonality of looking at opportunities and options for kids. We really have gone away from a one-size-fits-all model that really started in the it started a long time ago. I mean, maybe 100 years ago, but really in the 50s and 60s, it really was kind of a one-size-fits-all. And it's really gone away from that, looking at what kids need, looking at what the community needs from students when they become workers and citizens, making sure that we're providing opportunities to meet the kids' needs so that they can each reach their potential. So it really is about variety.
Well, I think that's a great point to end on, and we thank you so much, Dr. Jane Lindemann, the soon-to-be Waterloo School Superintendent, who will take the reins as of July 1st. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, and we'll be back after this to hear some legal advice from a local expert. Thank you.
Today could be the last
That was great.
Good job. My parents alone can't stop me. This was Wednesday.
I know, I told you it would be quick.
4 questions.
So we'll get you, Vivian, over here.
Okay.
If you want to sit, you can sit where Jane is, actually. Okay, yeah, that's fine, if that's good, huh? Is that good, Beverly? Okay. Thanks a lot. I'll see you soon.
Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
People like you can help kids like me stay in school. And
Okay.
United Way is calling
So how do you want to
be one of them.
So we'll talk about, you can tell me about Iowa legal aid,
It takes
what it's about, and then I'll just kind of ask you
dropout.
some questions
And the
about
difference between
educational and legal issues such as custody and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can broke down those two.
Make me a success,
Yeah,
not a
it's
statistic.
two that we'd like to mention.
Take a place to volunteer now at UnitedWay.org, brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Sarah Thomas with Waterloo Schools. Thank you for listening this morning, and this may air in the evening. So whenever you're listening, we appreciate your support. Joining me is somebody who will be familiar to some of our listening audience. It's Vivian Meyer-Betts. She is the managing attorney with Iowa Legal Aid in the Waterloo office. Welcome.
Thank you.
So tell us what that means, Iowa Legal Aid. What's your work all about as an attorney?
Well, basically, we assist clients who are unable to afford hiring private counsel to get access to justice and to the judicial system. We are a statewide nonprofit organization, and Waterloo's office is one of 10 offices across the state. We cover 8 counties in our service area, so pretty much the adjoining counties to Blackhawk and then up to the Minnesota border going north. In the event a person wants to do an intake, we have to determine first their income and assets to determine if they're financially eligible for our services. We have a phone number that is a statewide number. It's 800-532-1275. And that will get you to a system that will begin the process of finding out what the legal issue is, determining eligibility, and then turning the person over to an attorney to get immediate assistance with advice and information.
Okay, if you were hearing that and didn't have a pen or pencil handy, I'll repeat the number, the toll-free number to call Iowa Legal Aid to inquire about assistance, especially if you need that assistance and do not have the means to afford it. It's 1-800-532-1275. So Vivian, what are some of these legal issues that are coming across your desk? What are folks needing guidance upon or counsel upon that they just cannot secure otherwise?
Well, we have very limited resources, even statewide, so we try to focus on those issues that we believe are of greatest need to our clients. So that would include family law, where we work with folks who are involved with domestic violence or child abuse and neglect, to help them with custody orders, divorces, things of that nature, and protective orders. We also deal with consumer issues where people are being sued or bill collecting is in process. We deal with education issues, and we also deal with access to medical care. We assist people with trying to do advance directives where that seems appropriate. We also deal with income maintenance, so that would involve things like unemployment benefits, Social Security, disability, and SSI, assistance with FIP benefits, Title 19, things of that nature, to ensure that people have their basic needs met. So that's pretty much the general kinds of cases that we see.
So anybody who might have concerns that would rise to the level of needing an attorney should give Iowa Legal Aid a call just to run it by you folks and see if they might be eligible for that support. Well, that's great to know. As it pertains to education, I wanted to mention some specifics. When it comes to domestic situations, child abuse, how much is it important for parents or families involved in that to get involved with the legal documentation or really hammering out the problems or the process through the courts? How does that then play into their access where their child is concerned in a school building or having some level of direction in his or her education? Can you speak to that?
Sure. One of the main problems with domestic violence, for example, or even just where there's dysfunctional family and the parents are not in agreement, they're in dispute, so on and so forth, it becomes very difficult to have stability and consistency in their home. For example, a lot of victims of domestic violence move a lot, and so their children get bumped from one neighborhood to another and often change schools frequently, which only disturbs and disrupts their experience in education to begin with. In addition to that, people who are living with domestic violence as families are often impoverished by the family dynamics that are involved with domestic violence, and that only makes it more difficult to provide for the basic needs of children, which again impacts their ability to function effectively at school. So it becomes very important to address some of these issues and to establish who is going to be a parent who is responsible for ensuring their children get to school, they get to school on time, that they have a decision-making ability with respect to their children, that they can protect their children from a violent non-custodial parent, things of that nature become very important.
So if somebody were listening who had a legal concern in regard to their child and may be involved in, as you say, a domestic situation that's rising to the level of wanting to get out of that situation, would it be worth his or her time to put that call into you and to let you guys know what's going on and see if there might be some legal recourse that would help resolve that situation more effectively? Is that fair to say?
Oh, most definitely. And in large measure, we're learning, in the last 10 years or so particularly, that children who have adverse childhood experiences are really very much damaged by seeing one of their parents physically assault the other. So it's impacting, even as a child develops, their ability to function in day-to-day life as well as in education. So it becomes very important to get that issue addressed very early. And a lot of times people go through a lot of angst trying to figure out what to do. We encourage people to call early. Ask questions, see what the options are, see what remedies are out there, and how we can help them with those remedies. Because a lot of times people think, well, unless I end up with the police involved, there's nothing much else I can do, and I don't want to do that. So if we get involved and we can help them get a protective order, help them stabilize their housing, help them to protect themselves and their children immediately, and then that provides them with the opportunity to find stable housing. It enables them to meet their children's needs and to keep them safe from violence. So those things become very important, and they're all kind of intertwined. So.
If you're just joining us along your dial, we are talking with Vivian Meyer-Betts. She is the managing attorney for Iowa Legal Aid out of the Waterloo office, and I'm Tara Thomas with Waterloo Schools. We want to give you that toll-free number once again, Iowa Legal Aid, 1-800-532-1275. Vivian, can you speak to, obviously not using names, a situation where you saw a client get a resolution? What are the examples that would really resonate with people listening?
Oh, no question. I mean, that happens very frequently. Sometimes people return to the situation for a variety of reasons, often economic reasons as well as emotional reasons. But a lot of times people are looking for a way out, and we can walk them through that. We can get them a protective order. We've had people find stable housing with community resources that we can refer them to. We can assist them with connecting with financial supports until they can, get out of the situation and establish employment. We can assist them with accessing victim compensation. We can assist them with getting stable housing that enables their child to stay in the same school for a prolonged period of time. And we can also help them with a variety of educational issues related to children. For example, these children in situations like this often are faced with having disability in the form of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, sometimes other kinds of activity, or behaviors and activities that get them into trouble or disrupt their education. We can address those with childhood SSI, for example. If the family doesn't have access to the medical services or psychiatric services they need, we can help them get those benefits. If a child is so disabled, and that sometimes happens, that they're so disabled that they need assistive technology to be able to experience their education effectively, we can help advocate to obtain that technology and help them with that process. We can also advocate in the context of the individualized education planning process and make sure that the parent understands their rights and also their responsibilities and the resources that are available to help them effectively provide for the child's education so they can maximize the benefit they get from that education. We also can work with disciplinary actions to try to find ways for kids to stay in school, but also if they're facing consequences, to make sure those consequences are appropriate, and particularly if their kids are disabled. There's a variety of other things that we do to educate people about changes in the law, including educational issues. We have a publication that comes out quarterly that provides a lot of good information at a very basic reading level, and it's free to people who are eligible for our services. We provide training to volunteer attorneys so that they can help. We can expand the number of people who can get actual representation and advice by training these attorneys to be familiar with the areas of law that they may not have practiced in before.
Sure.
And last but not least, one of the things that we have coming up is January the 20th on Martin Luther King Day. We're doing a People's Law School.
Okay.
And it's free to anyone who would like to come. We're going to educate people about very specific areas of the law, including education, domestic violence, landlord-tenant, a variety of different issues. It's from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon at the Congregational Church on West 4th Street here in Waterloo, and there will be lunch available, again, for free. So we're hoping that people will come and continue the process of educating themselves about their rights and obligations under the law, and to help their families and children to prosper.
Well, thank you for those words, and I think it was so key that Vivian mentioned some of the elements where your child or grandchild's education are concerned, in that they can give you that extra help and support that you may not feel equipped to navigate when you look at how complex that system can be. If your child's identified as special needs, is given that individualized educational plan, or IEP as we commonly know it, it really is great to have the offer that the Iowa legal aid attorneys are giving for that support. So just so you know that you're not alone in a process that can be really complex and overwhelming when somebody is sort of new to the system and the language that goes into the complexities of navigating an educational plan. So for people listening who say, you know what, as you mentioned, you referenced this before, that they might feel that they're at the end of the rope, they don't really have any light at the end of the tunnel to resolve a legal situation, why would you encourage them to give your office a call and at least pursue their options more thoroughly?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, we don't charge anything for attorney's fees. We do our work and it doesn't cost anything to the client. So they may feel that that's a barrier to getting the help that they really need. Secondly, the earlier we can get involved, the more options we have, and often can help negotiate through things rather than end up in endless conflict. So it really, I think, benefits the family, it reduces their stress, it helps their child be more successful. And as I say, in the long term, if we have to get involved to actually represent somebody in court or before an administrative agency, if we've been involved early, we have a much better understanding, and it's not a last minute, run around and try to figure things out at the last minute, because the deadlines are often very short in these hearings. So it's really just a matter of making people aware of what they can do and how we can help them.
Well, and I think it's great that Vivian has mentioned an upcoming free event that you'll want to check out. It's People's Law Day, is that what you're calling it?
Yeah, People's Law School.
Oh, People's Law School, I love that, and it's appropriately scheduled for Dr. Martin Luther King Day, 9 to 4, 9 a.m. to 4 in the afternoon at the Congregational Church right there in Waterloo on West 4th Street, and free lunch, you can't beat that. And really it gives you a chance face-to-face to connect with some people who could give you the legal advice and guide you toward those resources that you may not be able to afford, but thanks to the folks at Iowa Legal Aid, they could help you overcome the financial barrier to get the legal assistance and advice that you and your family could really benefit from. And this is about, in many regards, helping the children, because we don't want children right now in Waterloo to undergo or be a part of undue stress or dysfunction that will inhibit their opportunity to get a great education and be happy, productive adults.
That's right. And the People's Law School is also a way to honor Martin Luther King's mission to reduce or eliminate poverty and violence. It's all about trying to educate ourselves and be life learners.
And let's do the number one more time. 1-800-532-1275 is the toll-free number to call Iowa Legal Aid. And Vivian, when is that number staffed? When can people call it?
We do intake every day except Thursday afternoon, because that's when we staff cases. But it's from 9 to 11 in the morning and 1:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon every day of the week.
Okay,
except the weekends.
Except the weekend. So if you call on a weekday, you don't get through, try again. Vivian and her staff will be happy to help you. Thanks so much to Vivian Meyer-Betz with Iowa Legal Aid, and we appreciate you in the listening audience, and we will see you again soon. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, too, and thanks for inviting us.
Thank you, that was great.
Well, yeah, no,
I appreciate your insight, and I think that this was very helpful, and I believe there's at least one person who will hear this that will benefit from it. I always feel like if you can reach at least one person with it. And then this re-airs a couple times, and then they put it on YouTube, and then we link to it off of our Facebook and our Waterloo website. We'll link up to the taped portion, but since she wasn't in here, I don't know how much, at least KBBG re-airs it, so that will be a benefit. And then we'd like to have you on again sometime.
Oh, yeah, and obviously, I mean, there's a whole lot of ground to cover in a short period, but if there's something specific about any of the education-related issues, like the IEP process or whatever, it's much easier to focus.
Yeah.